Okay, take two because the first one did not work. Hi, welcome to Christy Grace Scarlet Pen. Today we are doing video two of two. So yesterday we looked at our worst rated books, my worst rated books of the year, 1 to 2 stars. Today we're doing the best rated, yay! 5-star reads that I did this year. Okay, let's just jump directly into this video. I'm so excited. So, the first two books I'm going to talk about together because they are from the same author. I discovered Bethany Turner this year, and she writes fun little rom-com books, and 2 out of 3 that I read this year made it on my 5-star list. She's so much fun. I love her. So I read The Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck, and I read Plot Twist by Bethany Turner. These two were both 5-star reads for me. They were so good. They're so hilarious. She's so funny. But she also cuts to the heart of some really serious issues and topics and, situations that we have as humans with relationships. And I just love her to death. I'm so glad I found her. So let's talk about these two books really quickly together. So Plot Twist is essentially the story about a screenwriter and an actor who meet in a coffee shop. They don't exchange names, but they decide that in 10 years, if they are both successful or not, they'll come together and make a movie. And the story focuses on Olivia, who is sort of the main character of our book, and I loved this book because it was so much fun. Each chapter goes a year in the future, and so you see what's happened over that year. You sort of find out where she's at same day. So I think they met on February the 4th. Every year, she sort of has something coincidental about this actor, and she sort of works out who he is, and something about him always seems to happen on February 4th and leads her towards this, 10 years when that's going to happen. Now, with this book, I loved it. It was so good, and the ending was so satisfying. But also, I thought I would do something really fun with this book, and because every chapter jumped ahead an entire year, I literally read a chapter a day, and so it was like this. I was able to have a gap, not a year gap, obviously, although that would have been fun too, maybe reading this book over the course of 10 years, but anyway. But I did read a chapter a day, and so I sort of got to have that feeling of, oh yeah, there is a gap, rather than reading this book in one sitting, which I absolutely could have done because it was so good. But I loved that experience. It made it really fun for me to read, and yeah, just so good, so funny, loved it, it was amazing. The second book of Bethany's that I read was Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck. This book is absolutely hilarious. I think I've talked about it in another video before, but essentially it's about a woman who goes through a messy divorce and then ends up writing some steamy books under a pseudonym, and they become wildly successful, and then she meets a woman at a book club who's a Christian, and she sort of becomes a Christian herself and then realizes, okay, maybe I don't want to write this kind of stuff anymore, but she is under contract, so she's like, okay, well, how am I going to write this book that the publisher and everybody is expecting? It's like super spicy, lots of spice in that book, in her series. But now she sort of doesn't want to do that, and also now she's sort of falling for this young pastor at her church, and how are they going to navigate a relationship? She has literally just told the entire world who she really is, and now she's going to try and navigate being a new Christian, reconciling this idea of can you even write this sort of stuff? Is it good to write this? And she is under contract. What is she going to do? And so this was the most hilarious book I've read all year. This book, I was laughing out loud, like literally falling off of my chair, laughing hysterically, like coughing fit laughing with this book because it was just so funny. This is the first book that I read of Bethany's, and it just blew my mind, and absolute lifelong fan now because it was just so good, and it was so well handled. A lot of people don't really understand why Christians bother with no sex before marriage, or, well, some Christians, or this concept, and think it's like archaic, and like, how do you even do that? But this book covered that so well. How do you even do that? Because it's not easy. It's not like, oh yes, we're gonna flip a switch and we're just not gonna, no, it's not like that. So this book did so well and just was absolutely hilarious. So those were my 2 Bethany Turner books. Okay, so another one of my 5-star reads this year was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This book I feel like has pretty mixed feelings about it. I loved it. I loved this book so much. There is nothing better than watching like 8 octogenarians, old people, solving crimes. I loved it so much. From a retirement village in like the UK. I just loved this book so much. These characters were hilarious and believable, and the crimes that they solving murders, I just loved it. I loved it. And the mystery itself was really, really good. It kept me on my toes the whole book. And you think you have it worked out, and then something else would happen. You're like, oh no, I totally missed the mark. Just so well written, so beautifully done. The next book, this book I could talk all day about, so I'm going to try really carefully not to, because just honestly, this is one of my favorite books of all time, and I think every single human being on this planet should read it. And it is called The Choosing, and it's by Rochelle Decker. So the setup explanation for this book makes it sound like the worst book in the entire world, but just bear with me, okay? I'll try and do this as quickly and briefly as I can. So essentially, this is in a dystopian world where basically a cult has rewritten the Bible, rewritten what spirituality, Christianity, religion looks like, and basically has reverted everything. Women are just there to be chosen and to be married, and if they aren't chosen, they are treated as the lint on your shoe. They are like the lint on your top. Like, they are called the lints, and they are just treated like absolute rubbish, and you can't even look at these people because they aren't even worthy of being looked at. And so the entire world focuses on getting women, girls, ready to be chosen when they get of age, and if they don't, like, they basically, like, never can see their family again. It's a horrible, horrible world, horrible reality, but this is where the but comes in. So our main character, Carrington, doesn't get chosen. She doesn't understand why. She was in like the top of her class. She really should have been, but she just didn't. And so now she's on this journey to become a lint. Basically, they're doing the jobs that nobody else in society wants to do. They live in this walled off society because supposedly there was all this radiation stuff happening on the outside, and it's dangerous. So everybody, for hundreds of years, this is how it's been. And so for generations and generations, people just don't know anything different. This is just how they've been raised. But when she gets to be in this situation, she hears about some guy who is speaking about a different truth, and is speaking about actually how you do have worth and value outside of being chosen. And so this is her journey of everything she's ever been taught, everything her parents have ever been taught, and is that actually real? Is that actually how the world works? And is that actually how God works? Because, spoiler alert, that's not how God works. So I just love this book, and this book is, I think, amazing for anyone, particularly any woman who doesn't feel like she's enough. If she doesn't look a certain way, and then she won't get picked to have a husband, which means she doesn't have any value. Wrong. So, and I loved this book. I think everyone should read it. It's just so good. So this is actually book 1 in a trilogy. So this one focuses on Carrington and her journey of realizing that she has value and worth outside of what society tells her. And then there's also the second one is The Calling, and it focuses on the love interest in this book, and so what happens after that. And so he gets to go through his own journey of realizing he also has worth, but in a different way. So it's just really interesting, and I'm very excited to continue reading in the series. But this book if I could give this book 70 million stars, I would, because it's just so good. Everyone should read that. So good. Okay, so in my last video, I talked about a book that did not hit it for me, which talked about artificial intelligence and how that relates to the afterlife. Sort of like what happens to your soul and your spirit when you die if you are artificial intelligence. It did not win. This book, however, did win. Oh my gosh. So The Last Christian by David Gregory is actually just one of my favorite read of the year, and it could just be because it's sort of I happen to have just finished this literally in November, but I'm going with it because honestly this book was so good. Okay, so where In Synapse lost me, this book picked it up and won me. So basically this book takes place, a girl who's been living in the jungle in Papua New Guinea her whole life comes to modern day America, and technology has advanced like oodles and oodles. So America is currently rolling out this process saying that they can upload your consciousness from your brain into a silicone brain, which means that you get to basically almost live forever, and then they'll be very close to getting fake bodies to put your silicone brain in. You literally could last forever. This woman who has been living in Papua New Guinea her parents were missionaries. She's been living in this really remote village, comes into this situation. Basically, the entire America has completely disregarded Christianity, completely disregarded God, religion, whatever. They're like, nah, forget that. We have evolved past that point where we need it. And so they are just really, really detached from that. And basically nobody is a Christian, and they all laugh at her for having these Christian views. But then she comes back and she's sort of finding out that they are removing their brains and putting into a silicone brain. And so she just doesn't believe that that is going to be beneficial for your soul. And so she's trying to sort of bring everybody to realize that actually God is important. But also there's this huge fight between sort of her and some other people where they're like, is this actually going to be beneficial to, upload yourself into a fake brain, even if it does work? And so what would happen to you? So where Synapse failed in looking at what happens if you are artificial, what happens to your soul and your spirit if you're artificial, this book did it so freaking well. Okay, I will say though, this book is for thinkers, okay? This is not for the faint of hearted, alrighty? You can't, you can, but I wouldn't read this book if you are not good with deep theological or philosophical questions and thoughts, okay? There were several times while reading this book that I had to stop and think just for 20 minutes because it just brings up so many incredible, ideas and thoughts, and you're like, oh my gosh, what would happen? Just so good. Plus the fact that the story itself is just so interesting and so fun to read. The technology in this book is amazing, better than in Synapse. I'm sorry, Synapse, but I loved this book so much. It's supposed to have taken place in 2088, but I feel like technology would not. At this point, we're in 2022, so I don't think technology would get to this point that quickly, just to be honest. But it's so good. I just loved this so much. So, I can't even, no more words. No more words. Best book ever. No more words. Okay, the last few books that made it to my list were from the library, so I will try and run through them, not too long. Okay, so I did listen audiobook to Counted with the Stars, which is the first book in the Out of Egypt series. Basically, this book is a woman who is an Egyptian in the times of the plagues. So if you don't know the plagues with Moses and the Israelites in Egypt, they were slaves 400 years, and they God sent Moses to free them and sent 10 plagues to Egypt. And so our main character in this book is an Egyptian slave, not a Hebrew slave. And she is experiencing these plagues, but as an Egyptian. And so it's so interesting. You get sort of this outsider perspective on something that is just unbelievable. These plagues, unbelievable. And then sort of we get this journey of what is going to happen to her after these plagues. Is she going to stay in Egypt? Is she going to, maybe realize that the Hebrew Israelite people have gotten onto something? We're not sure. So, well, I know because I've read the book. This book was so good. It spoke to my heart. The ending of this book, I was driving and I had to pull over because I was sobbing. I loved this book. It touched me so much. It was so beautiful and it was so good. I've never seen or read or heard these plagues described this way before from this kind of a perspective. Just loved it. Loved it so much that I bought the next book. I don't have the physical copy of this book yet, but I am going to get it because it's so good. But I do have the physical copy of book 2, which picks up right after the first book. So I'm just so glad I got this one. I think I got it in Audible as an Audible book. It just was so good. Okay, the next one that I also don't have with me is Pies Before Guys. I did talk about this briefly, I think, in my holiday vlog. Because I read it on my holiday. It was a library copy that was really beaten up, so it has since gone into the bin. But this book was so much fun. Pies Before Guys is essentially like some chick who owns a bakery, and there always seems to be a murder that happens right near her bakery shop, and she and her older octogenarian friend end up getting involved in the investigation, and it is just was such a fun book to read. I didn't keep it. I'm probably not going to buy it. There was a couple of references in there to like New Age stuff I'm not fond of, so I probably won't read any more, but I really liked it. It was actually hilarious. So props for that. Pies Before Guys. It was amazing. Oh my gosh! Okay, so Tweet Cute. I read Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, and I loved this book. I borrowed it from the library. I'm getting my own copy when I can. I loved this book. It was hilarious. It was so funny. It was beautiful and heartwarming. So essentially the story boils down to two high school students who, there's sort of two setups, right? So the first one is overachiever who is sort of on this online platform where it's kind of like privatized for their school messenger system and message board and then private messages, and she sort of has this ongoing relationship with a guy at her school. They don't know who each other are, but she really sort of likes to talk to him, and they are always waiting for the drop of when they will be revealed to each other, because people's anonymous handles get randomly exposed at any time, at any point, but they haven't yet for these guys, and they have this back and forth and this really cool relationship. And then at the same time, you have the physical in-person relationship between our overachiever girl and our just slacker guy who's actually really smart. What a cliche. And they really just butt heads. They do not get on together, and so there is sort of this back and forth between these two situations, because those are the same two people, and so they don't realize this, and it's just so fun and so funny. I loved this book. It was so good. So I read Warcross by Marie Lu, and when I borrowed it from the library, so I don't actually have the physical copy. I would love a physical copy. I think I ended up getting the audiobook on Audible, but anyway, I loved this book. I thought it was so good. This world was amazing. You sort of end up with this almost like VR video game like sensation thing where like people have like I don't remember what they call it. Is it the Neuralink? I don't remember. But basically everyone sort of has these sort of glasses and where they can sort of see really exciting video game sort of graphics that come up over the entire world. And then there are these VR video game players who they're basically superstars, right? And our main character is a bounty hunter who is down in her luck and gets pulled into these games because she's a hacker as well. She manages to hack in to this game, and she just is like, how did you do that? Everyone is like, who is this person? Whatever. And so it actually was so good. I know I'm not explaining it super well because it was a while ago since I've read this book, but I really liked this. It was really good. The characters were great. And the romance, I was like, okay, I can buy it. Like, I could see it, but it was a little bit underwhelming. I think this book maybe was like a 4.5 for me, not a 5.55, but I did love this book a lot. Like, I really liked it. The only thing I will say is book 2, A Wild Card. I didn't even make it all the way through. I DNF'd. I just didn't find it has the same charm as Warcross. But I did really enjoy this first book. The last one that I read was Tokyo Ever After. So, if you have watched my first book where I talked about books I didn't like, Princess Diaries was like my 1 or 2 star book. But Tokyo Ever After is a 5-star book. They are basically the same concept, except Tokyo Ever After is the royal family in Japan, and it is just so much better. It is so much better. It is so well done, and it was funny, it was interesting, it was captivating, it was really, really great. It was a really good book. I loved it. Totally bought all of the romance, totally loved all of the plot, like the twists and what happened and the way that she sort of is trying to discover this royal family situation. Her dad is alive, I will say that, whereas Princess Diaries movie, the dad is dead. In the book, he's alive. But their relationship between her and her dad is just really interesting, and I really enjoyed this book. I've been holding off on buying my own copy and reading the second one because I want the hardcover books, because the covers for the hardcover is just gorgeous. And so I've been holding off to buy that, and I hopefully will get it soon. But I love this book. It was so good. I would highly recommend it for a princess book type of read. So, we made it to the end. Congratulations. Hopefully this book is not too long, because I know there was a lot to get through. But we made it to the end, so here we are, and I hope you enjoy hearing about my 5-star reads. I can't wait to see what will happen for next year in 2023. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the adventures.